So, hi guys, welcome. I was going to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon where we are, as everything dependently exists. Welcome along to our class on Introduction to the Nature of Reality, and it's based around the Heart Sutra. So I think we'll begin as we normally do by doing a short meditation. We'll take refuge together and offer a mandala, and then we'll actually begin the class. So please get comfortable in your seat. You want to make sure that your back is straight and shoulders relaxed. And you can keep your eyes open or close them. And as you breathe normally and naturally, I'd like you to become aware of the movements that take place in your body as you exhale and inhale breath. So your mind is becoming focused and your body is relaxing. And while you breathe normally and naturally, it's easy to imagine the presence of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the deities and the Dharma protectors, and the hearers, the solitary realizers, and the arahats being present. They're in the space above us. And surrounding us are all sentient beings. And we have decided to become enlightened, meaning that we've decided to develop the qualities of our body, speech, and mind to their furthest extent. We're going to rely upon our wisdom and our compassion and every skillful means we can muster to help others become enlightened. And to help us do this, we're going to rely upon the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, our teachers, and so forth. So please join me in taking refuge together and generating a mind of enlightenment. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Now, in response to this wish, lights and nectars pour from the heart of the Buddha, and they wash over you. They remove every obstacle to becoming an authentic a refugee, an insider, so to speak. In looking around at you at all sentient beings, bring to mind the four immeasurable thoughts. Let us wish that all beings have love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Decide to develop these yourself and then help others do the same. Again, lights and nectars come from the heart of the Buddha, and then they wash over you and over all beings surrounding you. Think that you and all the people surrounding you are now established in these four immeasurable thoughts. You have immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and immeasurable equanimity. And being so empowered, see yourself in front of that refuge field, about to engage in the 7-limb prayer. So reciting with me. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions, accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the veritable, holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. Now, just in case there's any clinging to the merit, we're going to let that go by recognizing that all phenomena are empty of any intrinsic nature. Think that this emptiness of all phenomena reappears as a wonderful pure land, which you're now going to offer to the Buddha and the merit field. So reciting with me, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Gurata Mandala Kamriyatayami. Release the offering. It's accepted by the Buddha with delight. You look up into his eyes, you see the Buddha smiling at you, and you feel accepted and at ease. And now, an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart, moves through space, and comes to abide above the crown of your head. It's facing in the same direction as you are, and it begins to descend, entering the crown of your head, coming down through your body to rest at the level of your heart. The radiance of this emanation begins to expand, filling your body and mind with light. And the light goes out through the pores of your skin and starts to fill the 10 directions of space. And filling the 10 directions of space, this light has absorbed every living creature and transformed them into the fully awakened state of Buddhahood. And you continue to breathe in a relaxed way with a sense of joy. You've accomplished your own and others' welfare. And now the light begins to withdraw from the 10 directions of space, and it re-enters your heart. You are breathing normally and naturally, and you can feel the seat you're sitting on. You feel embodied. And you acknowledge this meditation was one done on the level of imagination and has placed an imprint upon your mind, which will act as a cause to bring about its actuality. Meaning you will attain enlightenment for the benefit of others while putting effort into that goal. And now you breathe in deeply through your nostrils, and you exhale through your mouth. You allow your eyes to open if they're closed, you blink, and you can move your body in whichever way you like to feel comfortable and at ease. Okay, so let's have a look. So we're engaged in this course called Introduction to the Nature of Reality. You know, it's based around the Heart Sutra. And what we're going to continue with this introduction by going further into wisdom. We're going to engage with it on the path of accumulation. It's at this level of the path that we come across the four profundities. Form is empty, emptiness is form, and so forth. And today we're going to have a look at this object of negation, often called inherent existence. Now, these are the same books I've been relying upon, plus a couple more that are not up there, but they're very good too. So this book here, Insight into Emptiness, I've used this a lot today. You'll see this when we talk about the different similes in relation to the five aggregates. Insight into Emptiness and Searching for the Self are just tremendous for identifying the object of negation and showing us how we can actually discover that. What should I say about the others? I mean, they're all great. You'll find that the author will talk about emptiness and so forth in slightly different ways. And I like that, and you might too, because if you don't get it one way, you might get it another way. So you find resonances in the different ways the author presents the topic. Now, this is where we've sort of gotten up to. And this is what they call the brief explanation for those who are ordinary capacity. People probably just like you and I, and probably a lot sharper than you and I too. So here we're talking about the emptiness phenomena from the point of view of the path of accumulation in general. And here he says, correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So here is Avalokiteshvara saying this to Shariputra. And the main point to get here is that when Avalokiteshvara tells Shariputra that the five aggregates also are empty of inherent nature, this is not the same as asserting that the five aggregates are non-existent. So non-existence and emptiness are quite different phenomena, two different things. This term inherent nature has other terms we can use. They're all similes, and I want to introduce to you some of them now. And I want to do that because sometimes you might find it easier to use these other terms rather than inherent nature or inherent existence. So inherent existence is a false existence. I mean, there isn't anything that inherently exists. So when inherent existence appears to us and we believe in it, we're believing in a falsity. And that's what we want to stop doing. So synonyms of this false existence, this inherent existence, are like truly existent. And this basically means that something is truly existent, like for instance, the self. If the self were truly existent, it would exist in the way it appears to us. So I'll say it again. If the self were truly existent, it would exist in the way it appears to us. Now it doesn't, and that's why it's because true existence is a false existence. Now, one of the ways, what we need to do is to like bring this into experience itself. So we've got to do something so that the self will appear quite vividly to us. We can say, oh, well, there it is. And that's its appearance. But what I understand is saying it doesn't actually exist like that. And so we've got the appearance. We're going to question that appearance. So doesn't it exist in the same way it appears to me? Now, there's some simple things you can do to actually do this. One is to scare yourself in some way. If you have any great fears that don't sort of completely overwhelm you, like for me, I'm very scared of heights. So if I go up high and sort of look down, well, I get really worried, really scared, you know. And when that happens, my sense of I is afraid. Right? It's not. I wouldn't say, you know, Barbara or Lou, I can't go up there. My body's afraid. You wouldn't say that to me. I wouldn't say that to you. And I wouldn't say to you, Lou, I can't go up so high because my mind is afraid. Right? I would say to you, I am scared. I'm
Eddie,
scared.
this reminds me when one of our students took Geshe Zopa rock climbing, and he didn't tell them he was really scared, and he said, oh, my object of negation became very clear.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's right. And so if you ever get really scared or very depressed even, ask yourself, who's scared, who's depressed? You'll say, I am. And then just look, go, there's the appearing I. There's my I appearing to me. But I understand it doesn't exist like that. It's appearing this way. It's not my body, it's not my mind. It's appearing quite other. And I'm afraid. Oh, I'm depressed. I'm really scared. I suggest this to you so that you can actually use these states in a valuable way to identify the object to be negated, a truly existent I, which is a falsely existing I. So here, the I does exist, but in this, the way it's appearing to exist is not the way it does exist. And we
Eddie,
get a
also,
really good chance to question that.
don't forget to toggle between the screen sharing you.
Yep.
I know
So,
you've forgotten now, but next time.
Here's another term. Remember, truly existent, existing from its own side, and inherent existence, they are similes. So existing from its own side would mean that the self actually exists in a way that it could be found when you search the body and mind for it. So in other words, like, when you're scared, or when you're completely joyous, or when you're very depressed, the I is sort of standing out, revealing itself to you, and you're like, so where is it? So you go, well, it's got to be, somewhere between the top of my head and the bottom of my feet. It's either in my mind or in my body. It's like it's there, right? It's somewhere in here. It's not by the door or somewhere else. Right? So that's what we mean by the own side. From the side of the body and mind, the I is there. It's existing there. So again, this is a falsity, because when you actually do look inside, it's not there. You can't find it there. Now, by way of its own character is an interesting one. So something could exist by way of its own character. It would not need to be imputed by name or thought. Now, like I said, again, if you use the idea of being really afraid or joyful, like I said, the I does appear to exist by way of its own character. It doesn't seem to need a name or even consciousness itself. It's just right there. And finally, inherently existent. So this means that the I doesn't depend upon anything. So this, again, when you spook yourself or become incredibly joyous, the I will show itself very clearly. And like, you feel it, you look at it, you can sort of actually look at it and go, it's just there. It doesn't seem to rely on the body or the mind. It has its own sort of existence. So these terms can be quite useful in that way. Like I said, if you just find one of them and use one of them, you've actually got all of them. They're all similes. So it's very useful in that way. So I'm just going to stop the share now. And do you guys have any questions about these synonyms of false existence or anything from before it?
Eddie, they seem very clear when you explain them, but the moment the picture goes away and I don't have the list, they all just mush into each other, and I can't distinguish between them.
No, that was the same. It used to happen to me all the time. And that's why I sort of had to write it down like this as a list and then slowly go through each one of them. But that's just works that way. It just happens that way. So please, if it happens to you that way, I think it's natural, right? Normal, and it just means we need to, it requires a bit more effort on our side and to find one of them and just work with one of them well before moving to the others. It's good to become familiar with these similes because you'll find the Tibetan teachers use them nearly all the time. And they'll switch between truly existent and from its own side and this sort of thing.
And is this list, the way that it goes, is it does it correlate with the dependent arising of things existing by their causes and conditions and parts and imputation? Is there a direct correlation there?
No, you can use all of these things and use all those reasons. The reasons are also, it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's go back to in case Alicia's got a hand raised. Yes, Alicia, what's your question?
Hey, can I just clarify? I think you said if the self were truly existent, it would exist in the way it appears to us.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And by that, am I right that you mean it appears that there is an I that exists that's kind of separate to body and mind? There's kind of like an I that kind of exists from its own side or inherently exists. Right. Is that what you mean?
That's right, Alicia. Yeah.
Yeah. But even though it appears to us like that, we are trying to understand that I doesn't actually exist as mind and body.
Yeah, it doesn't exist as together.
Yeah.
The appearance is false.
Yeah.
What the thing to get from here is that we all agree, and we should agree, that the I does exist.
Yeah.
That's the first thing, right? That there is an I and it does exist. So this analysis is not about that. It's analysis is how does it exist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so now, like I said, these are falsities. All these things, they all appear true, but they're all false. How to discover their falsity? So this is where we have these different meditations which reveal the emptiness of the truth they seem to have. Right? So when we discover that, we go, they're false. They weren't true. They appeared true, but when I do this analysis, they're false. So the meditations we can do to discover this are these ones here. Meditations on dependent arising. So this is what they call the king of all reasons, because not only does it refute inherent existence, but it also establishes conventional existence. That's the wonderful thing about this. So it's the king of reasons. The other is called diamond slivers. This is called a refutation of the four extremes, but we'll just leave it like that. And this is the one we're going to look at today. Reason establishing the lack of being inherently one or inherently many. As I said, remember here we're not refuting. The conventional person does exist. So we're not refuting that. We're not saying, conventionally people don't exist at all. We're not going to do that. We're going to say is that although people do conventionally exist and the I conventionally exists, the way ignorance apprehends it in a false way, so the I that does exist seems to inherently exist, seems to exist from its own side. And what we're going to do is we're going to investigate to see if that's the case. And we can use this reasoning to establish that actually it's not the case at all. Fivefold reasoning and sevenfold reasoning are really focused on the emptiness of the inherent existence of self. The self does exist conventionally in mere name, but it doesn't exist inherently from its own side and all those sort of things. Now, when we look at this reasoning established in the lack of one or many, there are, they're called the four keys, the way you unlock this type of reasoning. And the first one, we have to actually identify the target. So the target here is an I that inherently exists, an I that exists from its own side by way of its own characteristics, and so forth. You know, there's 4 or 5 different false ways of existing. That's the target, an inherently existent I, a truly existent I, an I that exists by way of its own character and so forth. That's what our target is.
So Eddie, is that the I that we feel is there, like if we're rock climbing, or is it an intellectual idea?
So if we're rock climbing and we become afraid, right, the I will now appear to us to exist truly from its own side, by way of its own character and inherently, right? That's the target.
Yeah.
And then we have to what they call limit the possibilities. So when we say we're limiting the possibilities, we're sort of saying, okay, if this I does inherently exist as it appears to me, it can only exist in a number of ways. And in fact, we will bring it all down to just 2 ways. It is either the same as my body and mind, one with the body and mind, or it's completely different. In fact, oftentimes when we feel it, it's completely different. It seems, doesn't it? You know, like you go, well, it's not the body, it's not the mind. It's me, right? It's me who's scared. So if I do inherently exist, I can only exist inherently different from the body and mind, or inherently the same as the body and mind. You look at those as, is there any other possibility for inherent existence? Sort of same and different.
So Eddie, this is like the rules of logic, isn't it? Which I've just noticed, I don't know if it's the Queensland education system, but it's very easy to go, yep, these are the possibilities, but then in your mind go, yeah, but there must be something else.
Yeah, and so when the mind does, there must be something else. You could say, like what?
Okay.
What could it be? If there is something else, what could it be? And you know, you'll find all possibilities are covered. Either there's a union here between the mind and the body, between the I, the self, and the body mind. They're one and the same, right? There's a union, one and the same. And it's an inherent one and the same. Inherently one and the same, inherent union. So either that, or there's a duality, where I and the body and mind are completely separate, inherently dual. So this is something, I'll just say it again, it's easy to forget this. We're not trying to negate a conventional self. We are trying to negate an inherent self, inherent aggregates. So we come up with these 2 possibilities, and these are the possibilities. We have to analyze they are in a union, being singular, one. Inherently singular, inherently one is an inherent union, but they're one. Or inherent difference. Completely separate, dual. Inherently dual, inherently separate. So again, we need to identify in the target that we're identifying, inherent existence from its own side, true existence by way of its own character. We need to identify this target because this is the object that we're going to eliminate with our analysis. This falsity. We're going to see through it. When we see through it, we see it's empty. It's not there. The inherent existence that seemed to be there, the true existence that seemed to be there, the existing from its own side that seems to really be there is not there. That's what we mean by the empty. It's not there. And we can discover this through reasoning. And then I'm going to do a meditation with you to sort of see if you can get it through experience. We've got to identify the target. And like I said, the two possibilities, this is what they call the logical pervasion. And it's either inherently the same or inherently different, and nothing's left out here. Inherent union or inherent duality. So here they are, the absence of a true sameness between the I and the five aggregates, and or else an absence of true difference between the I and the five aggregates. Now, when we discover this absence, what we're discovering is that the inherent existence, existence from its own side, existence by way of its own characters, that does not exist at all. If we don't find it here as true sameness or true difference, it doesn't exist. And so what doesn't exist? You'd say, well, inherent existence, existence from its own side. It's not that the object, the I, or anything else, or the aggregates don't exist. It's that their existence as having an inherent nature is untrue. Okay, so I'm just going to pause again. So now what we're going to do next is go into each of these into a little bit more detail so you're quite comfortable with it. Before we do that, I'll just stop for a moment or two and ask you, how are you going? Am I presenting in such a way that it hasn't sort of thrown you for a loop and got you more confused? Is it sort of okay for you? Is there?
Eddie, I'm sort of confused.
Okay, tell me. It's okay, Susan.
I don't know what I'm confused about. Everything.
Okay.
Not everything. Your explanation about synonyms for inherent existence, false existence, from its own side, ways to, by way of its own character. So that makes sense. But then I just sort of got confused. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like, yeah. No, I know sometimes the mind gets a bit sort of like foggy, and just like you say, I can't articulate it in a way.
Yeah.
It's not quite clear. And that just takes it takes time, Susan. That's what I could say. You just got to hear it enough and sort of think about it, read a little more, and don't read too much.
So,
Okay.
Susan, my advice is, I don't know if you guys have a station like we do called SBS on television. So it's where it's all the subtitle movies, and so I encourage people, when you're listening to this kind of class, is to treat it like a subtitled movie, some amazing French movie or whatever, that you don't know what's going on, but you're relaxed and you're enjoying the ride. And sometime towards the end, it all kind of falls into place.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll go through these 4 steps now. So 4 keys. So the object to be, so we've got to identify the target, which means basically to get some certainty about the way in which the object of negation would exist if it did exist. Now, this picture here is of a man stealing another man's wallet, right? It's a thief at work. And what would happen is that this man is going to discover that his wallet is lost, but he doesn't know who took it. So you can't actually say, you could say, oh my God, my wallet's gone, someone's stolen my wallet. And people say, who took it? And you have to go, like, I don't know. It's a bit like what you're saying, Susan, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm missing something. I'm missing my wallet here. So the idea is we've got to clearly point out who the thief is, what the thief is. And the thief here is inherent existence, existence from its own side, true existence, existence by way of its own character. So that's what I said, the simplest way to get this is to put yourself in those situations where the I suddenly is threatened in some way or overjoyed in some way, and it pops out on its own. And you go, oh, there it is. That's the appearance of inherent existence. That's a simple way for us. Another way you could do it is, well, I used to take my dog for walks, you know, and I'd hold the dog and I'd be looking at the park and I'd look at the trees and I'd be just going to myself, does that tree appear to me to actually be there? You know, and I point at the tree, right? And I'd go, of course it does. Does that tree that I'm looking at appear to be really not dependent upon me? It's right there. It's got its own like treeness, own nature about it. I go, yeah. Does it seem like I'm here and the tree is there as an object independent of me? Yeah. That's inherent existence. That's the object to be negated. So we've got the appearance of inherent existence, and most of us would grasp that to be true. So that's we have true existence, grasping at true existence. The appearances are true. There is a real tree over there, independent of me, existing as its own object. So that's it. So there is a tree that does exist, but what we've done is overlaid it with inherent existence, which doesn't exist. Just like we have an I that does exist, and then we overlay it. We conceptually lay on top of it the idea that it inherently exists when it doesn't. So Chandrakirti calls this object the object that could exist without reliance on a subjective awareness. An object that could exist without reliance on subjective existence. Now, if you think about that, I'm sure it won't take you long before you go, like, how could it? That's impossible. It's sort of like saying that tree, and this is the way we are, you know, the tree that I was looking at, holding my dog on the leash, I'm looking at the tree. It's as if that tree could exist without an awareness of it. It certainly seems like it could, right? But in fact, you'll find like you know, it couldn't. But that's inherent existence right there. So that's this object or the target we need to negate. Then we come to the pervasion, like I said, so there's only two possibilities. If the I exists inherently, it must be inherently one with the aggregates or inherently different from the aggregates. So if a thief is on the property, he must be indoors or outdoors. And there's no other possibility, is there? But these are the only two possibilities. The thief is either indoors or outdoors. So if you look in both places and there's no thief there, then there's no thief. That's the same here. We've got to look in the two places, right? So they're inherently the same as or inherently different from. And see if it's in either place, and if it's not, it doesn't inherently exist.
So, Eddie, this is a little bit like Jeanette asking about the sound file. The sound
Yeah,
file is
that's
either
right.
on the website or it's off the website. And if you can't find it in either place, there is no sound file.
That's right. Exactly right. That's right. That's why I was sort of laughing when she was asking you to explain it. Well, there we go. That's right. Now, so here's a little diagram I've put up. And this comes from reading Geshe TED Talks, Insight into Emptiness. It's from page 222. So if inherent existence were real, then phenomenal existence is inherently one, inherently the same, inherently single. They're like the similes. If they're not, then they're inherently many, inherently different, inherently multiple. So we have inherently many, we have an inherent like duality there. There's two, more than one.
So,
And
Eddie,
one
when you
is
say
more than-
many, do you mean separate from body and mind? Is that the separate one, either one with body and mind or separate? Is that the one and the many?
Yep, that's right. So you can have separate down here, being different, multiple. So if you look at all those, either things are the same or they're different. Is there anything outside of those? Is there anything outside being single and multiple? Outside single and multiple is non-existence, isn't it? So if they were inherently existent and you find they're not inherently single, they're not inherently multiple, they're not inherently existent. They don't exist. And so this is like I found like a simple way to put it. And I just remember this one time at Chenrezig Institute, we're doing a course on emptiness with Khyentse Rinpoche. And he done inherently the same, inherently different. And so we sort of got that. And then he went inherently one and inherently many, and everybody fell off their understanding. A bit like you, Sue, you get it one way, and then the rest is like, oh my God, he's saying the same thing, but I don't get it. And that's what happened to all of us. So he just stopped. We're not doing that one. Just take away what you can take away. So let's have a look at these differences. These are the true sameness or true difference. True oneness, true many. So these are the reasons. So this is how it's sort of coming across, right? Absence of true sameness. We've got the true sameness, but it's not actually true. So in other words, the I in the aggregates, the self, the person, and their parts can't be differentiated at all because they're inherently the same. So the I and the aggregates are inherently one and the same. The I and the aggregates are one and the same thing. So these aggregates, so we've got sort of 5 of them, aren't they? One of them is form or matter related to anything physical, in particular our body. The next 3 just really have to do, well, all 4, in fact, all have to do with just the mind. This is saying, so we are inherently the same as the body, we're inherently the same as the mind. And we can't differentiate, we can't tell any difference here.
So, Eddie, when we're doing this, do we start off by going, okay, there is true sameness, and then we try and work with it and refute it, and then come to absence of true sameness? Is that the process?
Yep, that's right. So say if the person, if myself were truly, and the aggregates were truly existent. We're taking it from the point of view, that's how it's appearing to us. So we take what appears to us, and then we're going to see, is it true? And then when we examine to see if it's true, we discover it's false.
Mm-hmm.
And discovering its falsity means that what was true is empty of that truth. It doesn't have that reality.
Wait.
That kind of, yeah.
I'm taking notes. If the aggregates were truly existence, we take what appears to us and we what?
Examine to find if it's true.
Examine. Thank you.
Now, it won't take
Like
you.
the tree.
Yep, that's right. The tree, the person,
Okay.
form, whatever the thing is. Yep. But this is one way, and the other, of course, is the absence of true difference. So if there were no true difference, if there were true difference, right, then we're totally separate and unrelated. So here we had these different, you know, they have this way of analysis to go in the same way that you can have three different sort of animals, you know, and go, you know, these two, these animals are not related to one another. They're completely separate. You know, like we have a chicken and we have a cow. And the only real way you could say they're related would be to say, well, they're both animals. But then you could say, well, you know, but there's a chicken. Yeah, like they're different, aren't they? They're different. The I and the aggregates are inherently different. The I and the aggregates are totally unrelated and distinct from each other.
So Eddie, with these, we just have to like put up scenarios and see if they work.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the middle way consequence school would say you put up a consequence. If this were true, this would be the consequence. And you find the consequence is absurd. So you go, okay, that can't be that way.
So I find the previous one easier to refute than this one.
Yeah.
You know, like the one of saying the same. You know, I say, for instance, I am the same as my body. So, yeah. I mean, my favorite thing is those plastic surgery shows and watching Botched and things like that, because it just blows that out of the water, because you have a body and people think they are their body. But when they modify their body and take a bit off it, it's not like they've turned into two people now, or I am now in the garbage bin along with the bits of the body. No, they're still on the table. So the scenario that for me is much easier to get than the scenario of this one.
Yes, and I thought, and actually when we go through, I'll show you soon, you'll see it's really simple to refute both sides here. But I often took this one here as being the simpler one, the absence of true difference. Right? And my reason for that is like if we were truly different and I wanted to go to the toilet, so I often use the example of the toilet, you know, like I could just be sitting here and my body would wander off to the loo.
Suzanne has raised her hand.
Yep, okay. What's Suzanne? Yep.
Yeah, Eddie, what is the difference between the first one and the third one? It comes down to the word distinct versus separate. What's the difference between distinct and separate?
What's the difference between distinct and separate?
In the first one, the I and the N's are totally separate, unrelated.
Oh,
The
okay.
different word is separate. Yeah. And in the third one, the word is distinct.
Yeah.
So
just
what they both use the word unrelated. What's the difference between the first one and the third one?
No difference at all. We're just saying the same thing.
Why did you put them there as two separate points?
Three different ways.
Three?
We're saying the same thing three ways.
What is the third way? What I'm saying is, how is the first one different from the third one? They seem to me like they're saying the same thing.
They are. We've said the same thing three ways, three times.
But it seems to me the first one is the same way as the third one, not.
They are. It
the
is.
Same way.
It is.
Well, then why is it three separate points if it's 3
They're not-
points. What?
There are three, well, you could say 3 separate points to get at the very same thing.
It
They,
could also
they're
be
using the
because
same language. They're saying exactly the same thing. They're using.
Well, we've got the word distinct. That's the different
Yeah.
thing.
yeah.
So what,
because I
distinct
think,
versus separate?
Sometimes it's also because when you read in the books, someone will use the term unrelated a lot more than say the term distinct, and you might start thinking that they're different translations, but they're all relating to the same thing.
So here
Well, I
we've got
say the
words-
same thing twice.
We've got
Is my
separate.
point.
We've got separate.
Yeah.
Unrelated. Distinct.
Yes, the word,
they're
there's
all
a
get-
difference
they're all
between
similes.
distinct and separate, and I don't get that.
They're similes. They're all similes. I've just said this thing 3 times. All you have to do is get one of them and you've got it. You don't have to get all 3, just need one.
I
And
just,
those-
I don't see them
that's-
saying the same thing in different ways. I see 1 and 3 saying the same thing in the same way. That's what I'm doing.
okay, yeah, well,
Well, that's good. As long as you get one of them, that's it. That's good. The one that resonates.
yeah.
And the middle one says it very differently. The same point, very differently.
So now just looking at these, the absence of true difference and the absence of true sameness, or the true difference, the true sameness. Let's say, how do you guys feel about that? Are you sort of comfortable with this true sameness, true difference, inherent sameness, inherent difference? Are you familiar? Are you sort of getting comfortable with the terms at least? Barbara?
I
Yeah,
get the word. I get the words, but I don't get the concept. Does that make sense? I'm understanding the words. I'm understanding, but it's just not. It's just not clicking for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like what are the implications? So kind of you're saying this and I'm going, yeah, makes sense, but what is it? What does that actually mean then? Like the consequences.
Again, I
that
get
what-
the words, but
is
I'm
that
not
what-
getting the concept.
You see the consequences are quite pretty much straightforward, I think. But like you're saying, but I hear you saying something a little bit different than what Miffy's saying. But Alicia, you have something to say?
Yeah, so just to try and clarify it in my mind, if the eye and the body and the mind were all the same,
Yeah.
then like as Miffy said, if I went to have plastic surgery or if I had an amputation of my arm, part of the eye would then be gone because
That's
part of my body's gone.
That's
But if
right.
it was different, then as you say, like my body could go off to work and earn a wage and I could sit here on the couch and meditate and achieve enlightenment while my body was off paying the
Yeah,
rent.
that's right. Yep. So there you got the 2 consequences. There's 2 consequences right there. And you can see they're both absurd, aren't they?
Yeah. Slowly sinking in. Thanks.
Yeah. So there's a lot of absurd consequences. Are there any final questions here? And I'll move on to this. We'll keep going. Okay. Now, in relationship to this, so this is sort of a way of summing it all up, which is if the self were the aggregate, so inherently the same as the aggregates, then this self and the aggregates themselves would have to arise and disintegrate together because they're a union. They're one and the same thing. But if the self were different from the aggregates, then the self would have characteristics that are completely different from the aggregates, inherently different. So let's have a look on if the self were the aggregates. If the self were the aggregates, it would have to arise and disintegrate. So, how many aggregates do we have? How many aggregates make up the person, folks? 5, isn't it? So if the self were the aggregates, how many selves are there? 5. Exactly 5, right? Are there 5? Do we have 5 different selves? We don't. No, that, but the person is one thing, isn't it? We are the person. It's just me. One entity. So then we say, okay, if the self is just one thing, me, but it's exactly the same as the aggregates, and there are 5 of them, then these 5 must be 1. And that doesn't make sense. It's either, now we've got 5 persons, or we've got 1 aggregate person. Because, like I said, they're exactly the same. They're integrated, they're a union, they're inherently the same. So just that there, it's just like, wow, it doesn't make any sense. And it's like the idea if you used before about the surgery. So we go, well, I've got this body, and so if I'm the body and you take off my arm, is my arm part of the body? Yep. So how many eyes are there? There's millions of them, just in terms of the form aggregate itself.
Yeah, so when I'm watching those shows, what happens is you go, oh, it's me, it's me, it's me. And then, they amputate a part. And then you go, there's some magical thing that's happened now. It's not me.
It's not me.
So that means basically that I'm just ascribing reality to an assumed, a feeling, a assumption, and I'm just not using the logic at all.
No. The other thing, if you now across to the feeling aggregate, right? So there's so many different feelings we can have, and many of them oppose one another. They're completely opposite from one another. Right? So if we're one and the same, we've got the same problem, right? We are all of those feelings.
And this is where so many crises happen, where you go, well, who am I? Am I this? Am I that? How can I be all of these things all at once? But it becomes a mush instead of being able to sort it out, untangle it.
So what this is telling us is what we're not. We're not inherently one. We're not inherently the same with the body and with the mind. And like I said, there's a lot of, there's 5 or 6, sometimes even 10 different absurd consequences that come up that you could go through. So you could actually work out the one that settles well with you to go, my God, I cannot be, and I am not my feelings. And one of the other things I give you is saying, like the owner and what is owned are not the same thing. So I like to play around with this and go, so imagine me being a farmer, and I have a farm. I own the farm. The farm is mine. Now, if I was inherently existed with what I owned, I would be a farm, right? Or a farm would be me. But that's just impossible. That's nuts, isn't it? So you go, okay, so I have a body. So then I am the body. Just like I am a farmer who has a farm. Well, a farmer who has a farm, it's not a farm. And just like you have some shoes, you're not your shoes. And just like you who has a body, you are not the body. You're not inherently one the same as the body. Then there's this problem that follows, if the self were different from the aggregates, you wouldn't have the characteristics of the aggregates. So the aggregates, as you all know, are impermanent, subject to suffering. So here we go, well, okay, my body can age, my mind can go crazy, but I won't, right?
Kodo has her hand raised.
Yep, Kodo, yes.
So is all of this intense mind stuff just to not get attached to the stuff we think is real? Is that the point of all of this? One point of it?
Yeah, that's right. It's to stop believing in falsities. and acting on our belief as if they were true.
So Eddie, so like Kodo was saying, for instance, not getting then attached. So if the I and the body are not the same thing and my body gets sick, then if we think they're the same thing, then, you know, not only are we sick, but we're also really demoralized. But are you saying then it kind of gives us a way out, that we don't have to identify with being our sick body?
Yeah, of course.
Because it's not inherently the same.
So, you know, so for most people, when they come to the stages of dying and death, if you think you are your body, yeah, like, you know, that death's going to take place, then it could be this thing of going, then I don't exist at all. And so a lot of people have a great deal of fear about that. But I remember once going along to a talk by Robert Thurman, and he just asked the audience, what do you say? Who here is afraid of, he asked us if we're afraid of death. And what it came out was everybody was afraid of nothing.
Yeah, of annihilation.
Yeah,
of being annihilated.
You realize what to say, you know? And I just sort of cracked up. But everybody, a lot of people who had their hands up like this were just sort of dumbstruck. And were sort of thinking, no, when there's nothing, because I have my body, like my body's gone, right? When there's nothing, I'll be scared, I'll be afraid. It's like, hello. If you are your body and it's dead, there's no one there to be afraid. Right?
Yeah, like if you were actually a true materialist, then you couldn't be frightened of death.
No, that's right. There's absolutely nothing left, is there? But that's just one thing, like what they call clinging to the body as mine or me. Cling to any of the aggregates as mine or me. Yeah, it's a mistake, but it leads to so many problems. And it's the same sort of thing if you cling to the idea that you're completely separate from them, then there's other problems that go along with that as well. Both in many ways are nihilistic propositions. So what we're saying here is form is empty of these different ways of being inherently one and inherently different. Form is empty of being inherently the same and inherently separate. The emptiness of that form being not inherently separate, not being inherently the same, is the form. The form exists, but not its inherent sameness with the person or its inherent difference from the person. This emptiness is not other than the form. And the form is also not other than the emptiness. So this brings us back to the first one being the ultimate truth about the form, and the rest being the conventional truth about the form. And this applies to every other aggregate. Feeling, discrimination, compositional factors are empty of being one and the same, and empty of being one and different. So now I want to introduce you to a number of different similes. And these similes have to do with the 5 aggregates, and you might find them useful because they demonstrate both the empty nature and the conventional nature. So we begin with this quote from the Pali Canon. So it says that form is like a ball of foam, and feeling is like a water bubble. Discrimination is like a mirage, while compositional factors are like a banana tree. So a fruit banana, it's often called plantain tree, but basically they both produce bananas. The difference is in the flowers. And finally, consciousness is like an illusion. So we could say it's like form is deceptive, like a ball of foam. Feeling is dependent, like a water bubble. Discrimination are false, like a mirage. And compositional factors are empty, like a banana tree. And consciousness is unreal, like an illusion. But it's sort of showing us here this deceptive nature about the 5 aggregates and relating them to each of these other objects, foam, bubbles, and water bubbles, and so forth. Kodo, yes?
Could
Yep.
you repeat that again? I'm a note taker.
Okay, so form is deceptive, like a ball of foam. Form is deceptive, like a ball of foam.
Eddie, we've got slides coming of
Yeah,
these
that's
again.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
it's
Thank
okay,
you.
Kodo.
Thank you.
So here we go to this, like I said, this profundity of form. You know? So here we talk about the ultimate nature of the form being empty of inherent nature, being empty of a true difference and true sameness. Form is the empty. Like I said before, this is the ultimate nature of the form: feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, consciousness, and the I. In fact, all phenomena are empty of these qualities called intrinsic nature, inherent nature, all these sort of things. So they don't have those sort of qualities. And so they're empty of them. So now we come to each of these similes. Right? So what it's saying here is that the aggregate of form does not exist in the way it appears, like a ball of foam. If you probably you can see foam here, right? So it looks quite solid, doesn't it?
But I'm just thinking of your dog, Eddie, running along the beach trying to eat the foam
That's right, I remember that.
and being completely confounded of not being
Yeah.
able to actually get any.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You should say that this ball of foam is fragile and can't really withstand contact. I mean, just touch it, just crumbles straight away. So our body's like that. It's contaminated, and that's a product of afflictions and karma. It's fragile, feeble, easily harmed by small things. So when we look at a ball of foam, it looks quite sturdy. It looks like there's something that you can take a hold of, and like my dog tried to, and he couldn't. So we touch it ever so gently, it bursts. So it's like even though form appears to be inherently existent, just as foam appears to be quite firm, it's not. So the body, the form, is deceptive in that it appears to be inherently existent, appears to exist from its own side, appears to exist to be one in nature with the person.
This is also
isn't it the case. So when we see the person, we either have to see their body or a part of their body. Right? We go, there they are, that's the person. So the form, the body, and the person are inherently one. They're not.
This is nice, Eddie, too, because foam made up of all the tiny little bubbles. It's a lot like when we think of our body, and if we start actually thinking, how does it even physically exist? It's all those tiny little atoms, isn't it? And all those atoms are mostly space inside. So it's a fantastic analogy.
So brief, this is the profundity of the ultimate using the foam and the body. So emptiness of form is nothing other than the form's ultimate nature. Now the next three sides, of course, are to do with the conventional nature of the form, but we could take this across to feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, and consciousness. So here, remember, now we're talking about conventionality. So we're really talking about the dependent nature of the form. So anything that is dependent upon other is empty. We have intrinsic nature, or what they call independent nature. A nature not dependent and nature dependent. These two are complete opposites. So anything that does exist does so dependently, being empty of any independent nature. This is the one that's most difficult to get your mind around. But if you could find, one or two sentences from any of the books you read that resonate with you, hold it, keep that one, and just keep thinking about it, and then you'll see other ways to explain that might also resonate with you. So the ultimate nature of the form that lacks inherent nature, the emptiness of the inherent nature, that does not exist separate from the actual form. The form, being a dependent arising, means it's empty of any independent nature, any intrinsic nature.
So does that mean that you can't have emptiness without something to be empty?
That's right. Yeah, emptiness depends upon a basis, depends upon something too. And as soon as you have that basis, you'll know it's empty. But here, so emptiness in form and the emptiness of the form are the same entity. So again, before, they're not intrinsically different. They're one phenomena, but you can distinguish between them. You can talk about the empty nature of the form, but you can also talk about the form that has color, shape, disintegrates, is caused, all those sort of things. And because it is causal, because it does depend upon color and shape, all those things, it's empty of any intrinsic nature. And again, these two are one thing.
Yeah, Eddie, the example I like for this one is the two sides of the coin, because there are definitely two sides of a coin, but you can't pull them apart.
Yeah, that's right. Let's have a look now at the rest of the similes. So feeling is dependent, like a water bubble. So we know that water bubbles depend upon a number of different things, don't they? One, they certainly depend upon is the water. The bubble of water depends upon the water, right? So we have this dependency right there. Now, yet when we have our feelings, like I said, so they are also dependent. But boy, when you experience them, you forget that. Either what normally happens is that your consciousness merges into the feeling and it becomes like one, inherently one. And other times we have to sort of break it apart and get some distance, and now it seems like, I am the person who has a feeling. That's another two, person and the feeling. Now, so pleasant feelings are dependent upon causes and conditions, and so are the unpleasant feelings. They're dependent upon a mind. They're dependent upon the person. But here we introduce this idea that the feeling is empty. The emptiness of feeling is the feeling. Again, firm and dependent origination. So the emptiness of the feeling is not other than the feeling. The conventional nature of the feeling and the ultimate nature of the feeling are the same entity. And finally, no, feeling is also not other than emptiness. So feeling and the person, right, they're not two separate entities, are they? We don't have a feeling over here, me here, and then my feelings like somewhere else, and now they come to me, and now I feel them. So they're not intrinsically separate, and they're not intrinsically the same. They're dependent, like a water bubble. Now, discrimination is false. So discrimination is a mental factor that apprehends the different characteristics of phenomena. So here we can say with our discrimination guard that what appears brown to me, that's the earth or the desert. What appears up there might be some mountains, and what appears up there is like the sky. And what's appearing in between them, that looks like water. Or you might just say, no, that's not water, that's a mirage. Now, mirages, when they appear and you don't know they're mirages, they appear to us to be true. But in fact, it's false. There is no water there. There's just the appearance of water there. Just like for us, there is appearance of an eye existing from its own side, like from the crown of my head to the tips of my toes, somewhere in here is me. Like I said, if you scare yourself or have great joy, your eye will appear to be there, existing from its own side. Now, that's false.
So, Eddie, if the I appears, if the self appears, that in itself isn't problematic. It's believing it's true is problematic.
Yeah, that's right. The problem is the overlay of inherent existence and then believing in that, or the overlay of true existence and believing that what I'm experiencing is true. It's really me experiencing this. Yeah, that's right. So what Miffy's saying is there's a clinging in the grasp of what we call the belief in our appearances to be true. We're mistaken.
Right. So in terms of real life, then, like how we say we put on various different hats. So you're a teacher, or you're a mother, or you're an administrator, or you're an artist. And then you have the question, so who am I really? So all of those things in a way is like discriminating, I'm this or I'm that, or I'm this or I'm that. So actually you might for a moment be that or appear like that, but you wouldn't go, that's who I am really.
No, you're not really that. You're conventionally that. You serve those functions. So we say, I am this and I am that. I have this, I am a teacher because I have a job as a teacher and so forth. No problem. That's a legitimate, reasonable discernment, discrimination. Then, but if you cling to the belief that I am it, now you've got a problem.
And so then, like if we get sacked from our job, or if we start hating our job because of the amount of admin in it or something like that, then, we naturally have incredible amount of distress that comes along with that. And why? Because our identity's really bound up with it.
Yeah, it is. We've, like I said again, it's our identity and whatever we're doing seem to be one and the same thing. But so now we grasp it at one, Oneness, we're grasping at oneness, we're believing in the sameness, me and my job, we're the same thing. Me and my function, me and my behavior, we're the same thing. We're one and the same thing.
Right. And so then if we lose our job, then we think I am nothing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I have no purpose. Because I am,
or I have no worth, or
all those sort of things, right? So the other thing I particularly like about so we're discriminating. So we have lots of ideas, right? And many of the ideas we have, we think they're true. So this is an interesting thing to think about, right? The ideas are like true in the fact that they exist independent of anything else. And then you go, no, that's false. All ideas are false like that. They appear to be true. We always acknowledge them as being like true. But they are false, like a mirage. They don't have the truth that they seem to have. And this is another one I really like. The compositional factors are empty, like a banana tree. So when you go through the 5 aggregates, you've got form, feeling, discrimination, and compositional factors. So in compositional factors, there are a lot of factors. Right? Just all the conditioned things that don't fit into the 3 previous aggregates, the form, feeling, discrimination. So in there, you've got all the different emotions, the afflictions, intentions, the views, attitudes, as well as impermanence, dukkha, causes and conditions. It's absolutely, overflowing. So like all these things appear real to us, but it's saying that actually they don't have that reality. They don't have that truth. They don't have that true reality. They're empty, like a banana tree. So when you look at a banana tree and you look at its trunk, right, it looks quite solid. Right? It looks like the trunk of a tree. So if you looked at any other tree and you took off the bark, the surrounding outer layer, you'd have something solid there, the wood. Right? But with a plantain tree or banana tree, you start peeling off the bark, you just find more bark, more bark, more bark. So I like that as a compositional factor. There's so many of them. And you peel it off, get down to the bottom, and there's nothing there.
Is this like having all those many hats, all the different types of, jobs and functions and everything? And so, but we still think somewhere in there is a core me, a real core, but you take all of those compositional factors and circumstances and jobs and identities away, there isn't any real core in there.
No, that's right. That's right. There's no me to be found independent of all those factors. That's right. And so finally, our last one is consciousness is unreal, like an illusion. So consciousness, of course, consists of the 6 primary consciousnesses, and these sort of know the general aspect of the object. So it's really interesting. Like Miffy and I are doing a course at the moment on the history of colour. If any of you have some sort of scientific background or you can remember a little bit of your schooling, that the colours of the world that we see aren't out there in their objects. So colour is dependent upon the light, the wavelengths of the light, that wavelength striking the particular object, then coming back through the eyeball into the brain, and the colour is created in the brain, through the brain and consciousness.
And not only that,
they seem to have.
but that colour is actually a social construct and is different in different cultures and from different eras.
Yeah, that's right.
There's no external scientific reality at all with it.
Yeah, that's right. None of these things they're unreal. They're not real. Right? So they're unreal. So all your consciousness are presenting everything to the world as if they were actually real, when in fact they're not.
And actually this one with colour is fantastic because it really does look like, that's a red dress out there or that's blue out there. But even scientifically, it's not. It's happening in our brain with our brain processes. There's nothing out there that's actually red or blue.
Eddie, it's Jeanette. Can you remember one day in the Gompa we did this experiment, but we're talking about colours.
That's
and
right.
I saw a cushion and then you brought it from a side angle towards me, and I saw
Yeah.
a completely different color. It was a completely different color. Cushion was different color from what I saw it,
Yeah.
and I
Yes.
could never. Sorry.
No, did it go?
No, it was unbelievable, and because
That's right.
prove about that about color.
Yeah,
And,
it's,
I didn't
yeah.
believe it till that day when you did that. I didn't believe it.
Right. No, it's like, so they use this idea of the magicians doing their things, and it's like, I can't believe it.
And also, Alicia's just said in the comments, it's like the dress controversy over the internet a few years
That's
ago.
right.
There was this huge thing: is it a black dress or a white dress, or a gold dress or whatever it
Yeah.
was? And
Cool.
that was such a brilliant example, wasn't it? Because it was an illusion.
So there's this other, one of the stories of the art film we saw was about, so at one stage, yellow was the big color, right? Especially for royalty. And this guy invented a yellow type of paint that was just brilliant. So he thought royalty used to paint their carriages gold, this yellowish gold color, right? And it looked fantastic. It was like royal yellow. Until you took it out in the sun, then it went black. So it's like, at one side you're looking at it as bright yellow, when you put it out into the actual sunlight and drive around it, it looks black. And like for most of us, I'm sure that whatever appears to our consciousness, we think it's real. It's like I said before, looking at the tree. The tree appears real to me, objectively real in itself. There's a real tree there. I'm sure it appears the same way to all of you. But then you find like that's illusory. That's an illusion. There is a tree, but not as we're projecting it to be. There's no truly existing tree, no inherently existing tree, no tree existing from its own side.
Alicia's also put in the comments that at twilight, shapes begin to lose their color and then appear as silhouettes. So where did the color go? So you've got a whole minute left.
Yeah, I'm just going to bit of.
Where did the time go?
Anybody would like to say anything? I mean, I'm sure some of it was clear to you, and probably someone's a bit muddled. But please.
I have something to say. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Those beautiful Hubble space the telescope pictures. There's no color in space.
That's right.
and we get those beautiful pictures doing processing.
Oh, right.
Beautiful,
That's
but
a
yeah,
great
there's no
example.
color there.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, so color depends upon light. You need a light source. And yet it appears as if it doesn't need a light source, doesn't it? I mean, I'm looking at Lou, he's got a red t-shirt on, I think, or a red shirt of some sort. It really appears to me, it's right over there. That shirt, nothing to do with my visual sense at all. It's red. And you and I will appear to one another in the same way, right? As if we're right over there with the colors we have and the shapes we have, in and of itself, but it's not true.
And it also appears that Lou is right over there, whereas actually
Sure
like
does.
it's just my computer screen.
Yeah, that's right. So for our takeaway today, folks, these 4 keys, So try and look at, it's one of the simplest ways you can, this method and I think dependent arising are the simplest methods you can use. So you've got to identify the object to be negated first, then there's the pervasion, then it's sort of inherently one and the same, inherently different. It's not inherently one and the same, it's not inherently different, it doesn't inherently exist. Form exists, we exist, but not in the way we appear to ourselves, without inherent existence. So these 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. In fact, like everything is empty of inherent existence. But everything appears to have inherent existence without conventional cognizers. But just the fact that we've got eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and a mind, whatever they engage in, those objects are going to appear inherently existent. But they lack it. So inherent existence is really coming from the conceptual side of the mind. It's not, it's not through the, it's not, inherent existence doesn't exist. It just looks like it does. And there are 5 similes that you might be able to call upon to use in this examination of how phenomena actually exist. Now, next we're going to go into the path of seeing, and we're going to see what do you see actually when you investigate objects on that particular path. And then we'll move over to the many different objects on the path of meditation. So I hope it's been useful and fun to you and you got something out of it. So let's dedicate what we got out of it to attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of the Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures and as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. There's a beautiful aspiration, isn't it? Okay, lovelies, fantastic. Thank you for being with me this morning, being the class with me. It's great to see you. It's great to work with you and to talk back with you. Let's stay alive till next week, eh? We'll see you again when we continue working. Okay, everybody. Bye-bye. Again,
Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so